Happy New Year, Math 8 students. Welcome back. Hopefully you've already completed your first assignment where math is everywhere and it's already gotten those cobwebs out of your brain and it's filled with math again. When you have a paper and pencil, pause the video and go ahead and try the problems that are right there on our screen. When x is -3 and y is +45, evaluate those three expressions. And that means that you're going to fill in -3 for x, and you're going to replace the y with 45, and then do the calculations. Pause the video. When you are done, unpause and see if you are correct. All right, take a few moments, compare your work to the work that's on the screen. If you got yours wrong, go ahead and just cross out what you did wrong, rewrite the appropriate steps, and move on. Okay, the rest of this video is really recalling what you've already learned, and we're going to put it kind of all together to remind ourselves how much math we actually do know. What we are learning or recalling in this video will help us very quickly in our semester. So it's really important that we understand this content. Our goal today is to fill in tables with values so that we can graph, we could find the slope, we can understand the intercept value, and we can use all this given information to put a line on a graph or to understand what the line might look like. So take a moment, pause the video, write your equation y equals 1/2 x minus 3, create that table, and we're going to go ahead and work on these together so you can understand what we're doing. Okay, so we're going to use like what we did in our warm-up to actually complete this equation. That means every time we see x, we're going to plug in the x value. So rewrite the equation every time. Y equals 1/2 x, right? That x is now -2. We're going to go ahead and make that -2 over 1 so that it's a fraction being multiplied to a fraction. And then -3, because that's what our equation says. Let's go ahead and do that math. Y equals -2 because 1 times -2 is -2 over 2 times 1 is 2 minus 3. So y equals -1 minus 3. Notice that we simplified that fraction. And a minus is a party because they are the same sign. So if I have 1 bad guy and 3 bad guys, I end up with 4 bad guys, or y equals -4. I'm going to go ahead and put in that value in our table. And what we just did was we created a point of -2, -4. And you can graph that on a graph. Let's go ahead and do the next one. So every time I see x, I'm going to put in -1 instead. Y equals 1/2 times -1 over 1 minus 3. Y equals, well, 1 times -1 is -1. 2 times +1 is 2 minus 3. Again, if I have 1/2 of a bad person and 3 more bad people, I end up with 3.5 bad people. And I'm going to go ahead and make that a decimal so it's easier to write. Alrighty, we're going to do that with 0. 0 is a great value to pick, because when we plug it in, anything times 0 is 0. So y equals 0 minus 3, and y is -3. I really like this because that tells us when we had that y equals mx plus b form, which is what this equation is in the form of, that 1/2 gives us our m, and that -3 gives us that b, which is our beginning point or our y-intercept. That makes sense because when we have a y-intercept of -3, that's also that point value of 0 and -3, because our x is 0 and that y-intercept is that y value and where you start on that y-axis. So our equation matches our math. That means we did something great. here we go. We're going to do the next one with that positive 1. Plug that into the original. Y equals 1/2 times 1 over 1 minus 3. Y equals 1 over 2 minus 3, so just a half minus 3. And this is where we have to remember our sign rules again. If I have half of a good person and 3 bad people, they're going to fight each other out, and our bad people are going to win by 2.5. So we've got that value in. One last one to do. Here we go. We can do it. Now for x, we're going to go ahead and plug in the 2. So I have y equals 1/2 times 2 minus 3. Y equals 2 over 2 minus 3. Y equals 1 minus 3. Again, 1 good person, 3 bad people. The bad people win by 2. In that y equals mx plus b form, that 1/2, that number attached to that x, we call that the coefficient. That coefficient tells us our slope. Remember that? So 1 over 2 is our slope. That means that you would rise up 1, you would run over 2, and that our line itself is positive and pretty shallow. Let's move on to your turn. All right, on your paper, you're going to go ahead and write y equals negative 2/5 x plus 4. You're going to fill in those 3 values to find out if you get the correct y values by doing the math. Pause the video when you're done, check your answers, and see if you're correct. Notice this time I didn't show any work. I just gave you the answers for y. If you don't have those correct answers, make sure you find those little mistakes, like your signs. When you multiply a negative with a negative, remember you get a positive. If you have 2 negative people and 4 positive people, you end up with positive people winning. Those are the places that we tend to make our mistakes. So go ahead and pause the video, fix your mistakes so that you get those correct answers. Okay, now we're going to tie it all together. We're going to tie all those things that we learned together with this one picking values section. So on your paper, you're going to want to write that the y equals negative 3/2 x plus 2. We're going to remember that we have y equals mx plus b. Our m is that coefficient, which is our slope. And that coefficient is negative 3 over 2, where our rise is negative 3, and our run is positive 2. We know that it's going to go in the negative direction. Our b value, our beginning point, is where we intercept the y. That value in our equation is positive 2. That means our starting point is 0, 2. We can use this equation to graph. We're going to start on that y-intercept at 0, 2 and put a point in there. We now are going to rise negative 3. So if I rise negative 3, let's go down 3 to the negative values. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. I'm going to go to the right 2. 1, 2. From that point, I can do it again. Rise negative 3, so go down 3. 1, 2, 3. And over positive 2. 1, 2. I have some points in there. That looks pretty awesome. But what we're doing is we are going to have you pick any 3 values you want for x. That's a lot of power. You get to pick any value. Any value. Whew, that's like crazy. If you have an equation where your coefficient is a fraction, it's really easy to pick numbers that are either the denominator's value or a multiple of that denominator's value. That means I can pick 2's or I can pick anything that's divisible by 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, you get the idea. When you pick your values, remember, you have the control. You get to pick your values. But when you pick your values, you need to pick one value that is a negative value. Always pick 0. And then you need to pick another x value that's positive. You need that minimum of 3 points because that tells you exactly what your line looks like. So, go ahead and pick 3 values. You already picked 0, so you really only need to pick 2 others. I suggest that you pick either 2, -2, 4, 6, 8, 10, whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and pick -2 and +4. Pause the video, do the work, fill in your y values, and then graph the 3 points that you have now created. Let's see if they match the line that we've already drawn just based on our equation. Well, I'm super excited because our blue dots fall right within my line that I already drew. That gives us lots of different ways to graph from the same equation. And we're going to use this later on in our new content that we learned this semester. Hopefully you have a line that looks super similar to this. All right, great job getting through your first video of the new year. You have an assignment that matches. That's called table fill-in, I think. Something like that. Your teacher is available for all the questions and clarifications you need. Remember, it's super important that you understand this content and how to do this content. So if you're stuck, join those meetings during your class times and ask those questions. We are all here to help you. All right, friends, we will see you soon. Bye.